What is the most OP beginner build for Noah in Xenoblade Chronicles 3? I created a few rules for myself when making these beginner builds, since I will be remaking them with mid-game and end-game in mind. The first rule is, I can only use the 6 starting classes. I could also use 2 art slots, 2 skill slots, 2 gem slots, and 2 accessory slots. The first item in each slot is the most important one. The second is just for you if you happen to have the slot opened. I will also be briefly touching on interlink and give some general advice on the skill tree, but I will not be going super in depth yet. Starting with base stats, each character in the game has different base stats. As I am level 40, it looks like the base stats start to be more and more defined as you level. This doesn't matter at your level, since the build is mostly designed around level 20. For the sake of simplicity, Noah's best class at this point is going to be Sword Fighter, his starter class. Not only does he rank this class up super fast, but the character's base stats are designed for each character's starting class. So as far as min-maxing, it makes sense too. Our first art is going to be Air Slash. This ability hits pretty hard, but the added boost from canceling into it makes it one of the highest hitting abilities we have right now. Sword Strike doesn't hit quite as hard, but it offers the break reaction. This is the start of a reaction of abilities that could be used to really mess up your opponents. Since you're more than likely playing as the main character, it's even more important that you have this starting trigger. Also keep in mind that Sword Strike gets a damage bonus from hitting on the side of the enemy. Edge Thrust is our lowest damaging art, however, if you attack from behind the enemy, you can make up some of that missing damage. What this art lacks in damage makes up for in cooldown speed. This ability recharges every 11 seconds, making it an ability you'll be able to use pretty often. This also gives you more opportunities to charge your roll action, the ability on the right. Speaking of, we start off with Overclock Buster, however, Noah learns a second roll action fairly soon into the game, which is much stronger. So feel free to use Infinity Blade if you have it. As for our mastered arts, we're gonna run Giant Swing first. This partners up with Air Slash nicely for our fusion art, both attacks being really hard-hitting arts. This causes some really insane damage. Our second mastered art, if you have the slot, is going to be Maximum Voltage. This ability is a stance that makes your attacks unblockable and boosts your damage by 20%. You likely fought a few enemies thus far that just shrug off your attacks, mainly talking about those little tanky rocks. Well, this buff will help you bypass that. Now for skills, first I'll cover the class-specific ones. Sharp Eye boosts our dex by 20%. Dex is effectively our accuracy. Convert Attack reduces our aggro generation by attacks by 30%. Cypher's Edge boosts our critical hit rate by 20%, but keep in mind that it multiplies your current crit rate by 20%. It does not add 20% to it. Meaning, if your crit is really high, this is really good. If it isn't, well, it's only going to make a very small difference. In Spirit boosts our damage dealt by 80% when fighting a unique or boss monster, a very strong final skill to have. Now for our 2 options. Fighting Prowess is the most important skill for this build due to the 40% damage boost on all our physical arts. All of our arts are physical, so this really spikes our damage potential. The second skill is much less important, admittedly, than the first. It's Defensive Soul. At this point in the game, we don't have a whole lot of abilities to choose from, so a small defense boost it is. As for our gems, we're running Empowered Combo and Analyze Weakness. Empowered Combo gives us a 25% damage boost when canceling. This more or less means if we time our attacks properly, it's a free 25% increase. Analyze Weakness increases our crit hit damage by 25%. This second gem can actually be traded out with Double Strike if you would prefer that gem instead. Both gems are viable. As for our accessories, first let me just explain that you do not need the same accessory that I'm using. The idea here is to match the effect on them. There are a lot of accessories in this game that do the same thing, just with variable effects. So with that being said, we're looking for an accessory that boosts damage dealt for the first 30 seconds of battle. This is going to be the highest overall damage boost accessory you can find at this point in the game. You can swap this out during tough encounters with an accessory that does bonus damage to that specific enemy type, since on longer fights the 30 seconds will not be long enough to make a large enough difference. Our second accessory is going to be boost attack by a certain percent. In my case, it's 25. Keep in mind, you cannot equip accessories with the same effects, even if it's a different accessory. The idea behind the soul tree is pretty simple at this stage in the game. There are a lot of really strong things you can go for, but no matter how strong those things are, if you can't stay in your form very long, it's all for nothing. So, I recommend you start grabbing all the heat control time nodes. It's the red node with a gauge partially filled. There are two versions of this node. The heat control time, which is just an overall heat gauge savings, and heat control art canceling. Art canceling is really good if you already have the ability that allows you to cancel your art into each other, but the investment for this is quite high and not realistic for a beginner build, so prioritize the general use ones. As for where you get all the arts and skills, go on your class selection screen and press ZR. This will show you how you get your unlocks. I hope you enjoyed my beginner's build today. My plan is to create one of these for each main character before moving on to mid-game versions of these builds. Let me know in the comment section if there's any specific information you want in a video format. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more.